I'm Linda van Tilburg for Biznews, and with me is Professor Piet Croukamp from the Northwest University Business School. And we're going to talk about what is behind the ANC's love of Russia, of Mother Russia, and it seems of Vladimir Putin. Hi, Piet, and welcome.
Good day, thank you.
So what lies behind this, what you called in one of your articles, a sycophantic admiration of the ANC of Russia?
Well, you'll remember that I think a day or two after Russia invaded Ukraine, Naledi Pandor actually issued a statement condemning the attack by Russia on a sovereign state. And then about 24 hours later, she was forced to withdraw that, and there was a new statement which seemed to pursue the idea of neutrality, or that South Africa doesn't really won't choose sides in this conflict. And of course, that was a concern to most people but we said, well, the ANC has a long history with the old Soviet Union, and that has now made way for a relationship with the Russians. So maybe there's some degree of understanding for a position of neutrality. In other words, we don't intervene. Since then, I think the Americans and the European Union has quite rightly accused South Africa of not actually being neutral, not staying out of the conflict, but actively pursuing a relationship with Vladimir Putin and the Russians, which could attract the sanction regime, and which could force America to act upon some of the things that South Africa is doing and how they express their views on the conflict. And I think that is of great concern for South Africans. Our trade relations are largely embedded in the European Union and the Americans, and we have preferential trade access to the American markets, for instance. And we export high-quality vehicles, for instance, and agricultural products to America. And we have almost no trade relationship. We have, insignificant one with the Russians. So this is political. It's ideology, if you wish to call it that. It's got nothing to do with the realities of our relationship in the international political economy.
Yeah. So if it's all political, why are they doing it? Because it's clearly already damaging. Some people are even speaking of the word silent sanctions that is happening because of this. Why are they so persistent of this? And is it sanctioned by President Ramaphosa? If Naledi Pandor initially, did the right thing by condemning the invasion into Ukraine?
This thing is driven persistently from the office of the president. I know at the 55th National Congress of the ANC, they expressed strong views in favor of the ANC's relationship with the ANC. I understand that, but the repudiation of Naledi Pandor didn't come from the ANC; it came from the president's office, and since then, Ramaphosa actually made it his cause, this relationship between Russia and South Africa. And if you think carefully about it, and we now know for a fact that the Russian oligarch actually sponsored the 55th Congress of the ANC, the conference. The ANC ran into financial problems not too long ago, and they couldn't pay salaries at the Thule House and their various offices around the country. And they had a massive tax bill. And that's the one thing of Kieswetter. He wouldn't let them off the hook there, and he made it publicly. He made it known that the ANC owes the tax man a lot of money. So they had this massive tax bill, I think around about 90 million rand. They didn't pay the pensions of their workers over to the pension fund. They neglected a whole lot of funding or payments that they had to do to service providers. And suddenly the problem went away. They can pay salaries. They settle their bill with the receiver of revenue. And you have to ask the question, where do they get the money from? Because if you will know that in South Africa, any party that gets funding from overseas must declare it to the Independent Electoral Commission. Well, that money does not really explain why the ANC can suddenly pay all its bills. There must be some other sources of funding, and it must come via some other avenues. It doesn't come through the Independent Electoral Commission, because if you add up all the money, it still doesn't solve the ANC's problems. Well, I think there's not only intelligent speculation, I know we can now trace it back to the relationship with Russia, and specifically some oligarchs that do assist the ANC with their money problems.
You're talking, of course, of Victor Vekselberg.
Yeah, I decided not to mention him, but if you...
Oh, sorry, I did.
Braver than me, but yeah. But I think you're exactly right. It is him. There might be others too. I wouldn't be surprised if there are other ways that the ANC get money, but that he's in the open. We know he does support. He was the one that paid the bill of the ANC during the 55th Congress, and he has made several donations to the ANC via the Independent Electoral Commission as well. And he is extremely close to Vladimir Putin. So it's just obvious if you map it. Why is this almost irrational support at massive risk to the South African economy, at massive risk at our car assembly plants in Pretoria and in Kaberga? Why do they take the risk with this relatively successful part of foreign investment in the South African economy? It can only because it serves the interest of the ANC as a party. And you'll remember that Ramaphosa has expressed his opinion about this very clearly in the past. He said that if I'm called an ineffective and inefficient or a bad president because I prefer to keep the ANC together, so be it. And I think this is a manifestation of that policy.
So if there's other funding that is not reflected, and the IEC does not know about, isn't that illegal?
Of course it's illegal. But so is the money that came in through Pala Pala. That money crossed the border into South Africa. We don't know really what the purpose of it was and where it came from. And of course we can, if they refuse to tell us, then they also give us permission to speculate intelligently about it. And we know, and I think that's the name that I also mentioned in that article, of Diani Chauke. We know he flies around on the presidential jet to many destinations all over the world. And we know that he does fundraising for the ANC for many years already. And if you don't believe me, no other person than the ANC stalwart that is now at the head of the South African Airways said so on Twitter. He said, Benyani, where do you get the money from? Because Benyani campaigned for a position on the top 7 of the ANC. So we know that Derek Hanekom said on Twitter that, where did you get the money from? He asked him deliberately, where did you get the money from for the campaign that you ran in the Northwest Province for the position of Treasurer General of the ANC? Hanekom was suggesting, I think, that money might come from opportunistic sources. We know that Chauke was heavily involved in the Pala Pala controversy. We also know that he was one of those people that advised the president during the CR17 campaign not to involve himself in the account that actually funded Ramaphosa's campaign. Because Ramaphosa himself said in Parliament, I don't know what is gone on that account. I was advised not to involve myself there. So, and then eventually a court allowed Ramaphosa to keep that account under wraps. Chauke was involved there. Chauke was involved in Pala Pala. Chauke flies all over the world, do fundraising for the ANC. Chauke is now in Russia as we speak, ostensibly preparing for a visit of an African delegation to Russia and to Ukraine to serve as a peace type of mission. But he's been there before any of the other members of this so-called mission. He's been there for a while. He's there together with our defense force. What are they doing there? Fundraising for the ANC can be the only answer. Maintaining the relationship with the Russians can be the only answer, because if they don't maintain that relationship, it may have massive financial cost or consequences for the ANC.
So the many visits to the Kremlin that you see, you talked about Chauke, and are they all sanctioned by President Ramaphosa? Because one after the other, ministers, officials of the ANC are going to Russia.
These people cannot leave South Africa unless they get permission from the minister, if it's the head of the defense force. And any minister or Chauke must get permission from the president. So the president knows every person and whoever flies to Russia, and he approves it unconditionally. So he's maintaining that relationship from his office. And that's the weird thing. I know Thabo Mbeki had his AIDS policies that killed 340,000 people in South Africa. We know Jacob Zuma had state capture with massive consequences to our democracy. Now we know that Ramaphosa, this relationship with the Russians can come at incredible consequences for our economy. In fact, we have a no-growth economy. We have a dearth of foreign investment in South Africa. The Reserve Bank this week warned the government that we simply cannot afford any secondary sanctions against South Africa. Business leaders met Ramaphosa last week. It's a second visit in a couple of months. Said, please don't do this to us. We're still driving. At the same time, he sent Chauki to Moscow. At the same time, his head of defense force is in Russia. This is one of the things, in the same way that we associate Mbeki with the HIV/AIDS policies and Zuma with state capture. This will be the legacy of Ramaphosa. First of all, that he is absolutely too spineless to manage South Africa. And secondly, that he really sold us cheaply in defense of his own political party for funding from opportunistic sources. Just remember, all these oligarchs got their money in corrupt ways. There's not one of them there are not many Bill Gates there or Elon Musk there. All of them are part of a corrupt practice, a form of state capture in Russia. And those are the people that we have a relationship now at the expense of the South African economy.
So South Africa's stubborn adherence to its policy that it is non-aligned. Yeah, sorry. Ramaphosa's.
But more specific, Ramaphosa's.
Okay, sorry, I meant by the South African government. Yes, I agree. Ramaphosa's stubborn refusal to accept that what the path he's going down is catastrophic for South Africa. It's just Russia seeking a return of investment into the ANC, and the ANC is paying them back by just backing them to the hilt.
Yeah, look, the ANC don't think of themselves as going down. They think that it's still very possible to get 52% at least of the vote, 54% of the vote with next year's national elections, and then they can govern for another, another 10 years if they manage it well. And what they will do is they will burn diesel to keep Eskom going. They will make sure that now the national health insurance policy become a tool of propaganda for them. And the other thing is they will just make sure that the South Africans know that the grants, the monthly grants, will be paid, and they might even increase it, and they might change it over into a more type of embedded system of financial support to poor South Africans. They will use the resources of the state to make sure that they get re-elected. And they have been successful in the past, and they may be successful again. I'm not one of those who think that they will necessarily lose the election just because they got only 47% of the vote in 2021.
Ooh. Professor Piet Croukamp, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.